next to the eyes, the mouth, I would say, is the next most important part of your portrait. Your eyes and your mouth are the things that make up, in combination, your expression, and we read people's faces all the time. So it's another very important part of the face to concentrate on. Similarly to how when we did the nose, we want to avoid any harsh lines. That's a common problem that people have when they do a portrait. Often the mouth can look like it's been stuck on as an afterthought, and it generally is just that. They make the outside lines, bounding it too harsh. So all the time we're going to think about it just being an extension of the skin around it. It's just a different type and colour of skin. I'm just going to start off here, putting in some of the background skin colour. This lady's got a very fair complexion, so it's a little bit like when we were working on the baby's skin. Just trying to keep it nice and light all the time. And you might be able to see here, just as I'm going over, that I've used a very small grid in this area. Lots of grid lines there, because like with the eyes, if you make an error in your drawing up on the mouth, it's going to change completely the person's expression. The eyes, if you get the catch lights wrong, will make it look like somebody's looking in a different direction. If you get the shading in, for instance, eyebrows wrong, it will make their expression possibly even change from happy to sad. Similarly with the lips. So it's important that your drawing in the first place is very accurate. This picture that we're working from is a lot smaller scale. So like in section 1, when I was talking about what determines how big your finished picture is, it might be that you would prefer, like I do, to work larger to blow your picture up, because then you can get more detail in areas like this. Today we're just working on this quite a small scale, so we're not going to be able to get as much detail in on these lips as we would if it was an enlargement, but we can still put in what's there and make it communicate what we want it to. So I'm just going to go a little into the lips with that colour, but not where the highlight is. I'm going to leave that white for now. And I'm going to work with a mid-pink shade and just start to bound these areas of shadow. Just going to get rid of the graphite a bit more actually, and those edges, just so I can only just see it. Like I said, it's all about losing harsh lines on the edges. Not too bothered about that midline staying there. We'll keep that in. Gives us a guide of her expression, her smile. But even there again, it's when you look closely at the photograph, really look hard, you'll notice it's not the black line it immediately looks like when we first glance at it. When you get really close in, you can see that the shadow extends from it, the same way when we did the baby's nostrils, always working out from the shade, making it connect to the surrounding skin. These areas in the corner of the mouth are particularly important for expression. They, if you like, are almost like the catch lights were in the eyes. They're the thing that give the smile or the grimace or whatever expression they've got, the shape. Expressions of mouths are very complicated. We can read people's faces. It's remarkable really just how much we can tell from expression, and that's why it is so important to get it right. I think that's what puts people off sometimes about drawing mouths, that it can go very wrong if you get it wrong. But if you've taken your time with the initial drawing in, you can be confident that you're doing everything in the right place, and then it's just a matter of looking, keeping looking all the time. And this lovely bit of Cupid's bow shape there is going to really help me when I'm defining that area. Like a little V shape coming in there. What you'll notice generally with mouths, closed mouths like this, is that at the edges, where they get further away from you, they're going to be in shade. So it's like a nice curve outwards. And this cheek fold there is caused by a combination of the nose and the mouth. Well, the mouth moving and the nose not moving, so it's pushing up. So we're going to go right, extend it right up to there. And now a bit of the lip colour coming in. You can see that this top lip here is darker, and then the highlight falls on the bottom lip as the light hits it from above. You tend to see that more on portraits that are from the front. This is quite 3/4 on this pose. When a photograph's been taken from the front, usually the top lip tends to be darker than the bottom one, and slightly different in colour as well. I'm just going to pay some attention to the folds on the surface of the lip, these little lines that radiate down. On something as small scale as this, we're not going to get huge amounts of detailing, but they're still important just to get the placement right and to make sure they're curving as well, not just straight lines. Helps give the suggestion of the fullness of the lip. Another one around about there. That's a nice curved one. And you can see already, just by doing that, I'm making the roundness. And one or two of them extend. You can see even on this photograph that they extend up to the past the line of where you think the lip stops. She's got one or two freckles as well just on the borders, so I'm just going to suggest those. And at this minute I think it's just now going to help me to have this shadow here, the shadow cast from a bottom lip. So I'll raise that graphite. And you can see the little areas where, again, the lip colour seems to come down to those shadows and the shadows seem to go up to it. Everything meets. And I want to try and keep that V shape there because it's echoing the one above. So I'm just going to try and get the placement of that right. What I was doing then was just checking that where it was in relation to the end of the nose. I'm just going to move it over a little bit. And here I can see that there's some little hairs. I'm going to suggest that tiny bit with a bit of texture, making that line very hairy, just with some little strokes. Because of course the skin is covered in tiny hairs. And paying attention to tiny details like that will make your portrait more natural. And they're so tiny. They're not going to look out of place, but they're just going to help give a softness to the skin. It's going to define the mid-edge, the point at which the two lips meet. Keeping it a nice, feathery, hazy line. And then I'm just going to extend that down and try and find this line where that midline meets the highlight. And then where the bottom of the highlight meets the underside of the lip. Right by that line there, that highlight does a little kink. Keep that in. And then very lightly suggest the top edge, remembering that we don't want any harsh line there. I'm going to extend that colour up into that shadow. I've just taken it a bit too far up, so I'm going to make that correction. Keep that nice light area bound in the top lip. And change to a burnt ochre and come in a little bit darker on it. It's important when you're working on a smaller scale as well to keep your pencils really sharp. Obviously allows you to get much finer detail. And again, adding some of this shading underneath is just going to help me make that line. So it gives me a reference point to make the curve to. Then I can look at this negative shape here and make sure I'm getting everything right. And you'll you'll start to see little areas where there's almost circles balanced across the line, if that makes sense. So areas where the shadow will extend above and below the midline, like a little wiggle. Sometimes they extend up to be in one of these little crease lines, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're just a suggestion. So you see we've not gone anywhere near any pink or red yet. As with the cheeks, even though that is the predominant colour when you first look at the photograph, you really don't want to be introducing them just yet, because they're very strong colours and can be very harsh if you apply them too hard too soon. And also they do tend, as we talked about in the first section, to be the colours that have the most Rogue pigments in them, that are the least light fast. So if you can build up the colours from these nice earthy tones, they tend to be the ones that are the longest living colours. They will be the ones that stay on your portrait even after everything else has faded. So wherever possible, try and use them first. And just working following those curved strokes. You don't have to be dead accurate about copying the ones that are actually there. Not when you're working small like this. Just a suggestion of them will do. Remember, these curved edges where it goes into the end of a smile line are going to be darker. The edges of the lips, the furthest part away, are going to be in shadow. And also even less definition between the surrounding skin and the lip. More fuzzy. Same at this side. I'm just going to bring in some purple, start to add a bit of the colour. And where the tops of these lines meet this midline, you can make like triangle shapes at the tops. Gives them a bit of weight to tie them to that midline. And you can see I've not put any pink or red on yet, but we're starting to get a suggestion of the actual colour. I'm just noticing now that that little lovely seagull V shape there was wrong, how I'd got it drawn, so I'm just going to correct that. It's going to really help me be able to shape this Cupid's bow top lip. And that area there's a little bit wrong as well. Just change that. Just putting in this surrounding skin tone just to help give an idea of how it connects up to the nose. Because without that it's very difficult to concentrate on it in isolation. We need something that connects it to the previous place. Again, just filling in underneath as well, give it some context to sit in, otherwise it's going to end up just being like the Cheshire Cat, just mouth and nothing else. Back to my purple, and now I'm concentrating on keeping that highlight midway up the bottom lip. You'll notice that some of these lines come from the top and some come from the bottom, like stalagmites and stalactites. So if you just do a mixture, it'll look more natural. Another good reason to stay away from your pinks and your reds till the end is if you use too much of them, it can make the person look like they've got lipstick on. Obviously if they are wearing lipstick, those are the colours you'd use, but most people's natural lip colour are more mixtures of purples, browns and peachy type colours. And you can see how these shadows definitely are now starting to influence this bottom lip. I'm just using the same colour in the shadow on the skin and then taking it up through into the lip, working as the two things together as one. Area of hairs. And tiny bits like this little highlight here and just the shape of that dark are what absolutely give you the expression. I'm still zoning up to this highlight so it doesn't look yet like it's quite in the right place when I sit back. That's just because we've not put enough dark in at the bottom yet to push it up. I'm just continuing building like this, very gradually. And you can see I've still kept this highlight very bright white, but we will be going in and putting a pinky tone on it eventually just to tone it down a little. You want to keep it, especially if the person did have lipstick on, you would want that as a bright white highlight. We can make it a bit more subtle last thing, but it's better to preserve it as long as you can, then you don't accidentally go over it. If it's a stark contrast looking at you like that, you're gonna be less likely to go over it. And you can see that in order to build that edge, the point where the pink of the lip meets the white of the skin, you need to have that upper lip in place as well, the skin between the nose and the lip, because it's an edge. It's an edge between the two where it changes direction. We can also help indicate that by doing the strokes in those directions. And you can see it's really starting to give some illusion of the three-dimensional quality of that roundedness of the lip now. just going to carry on working on this surrounding area of skin a bit more, the same way we've done with all the rest of the skin tones. Join me again in a few minutes, and then we'll concentrate on putting the final colour in on the lips. So I just spent a few minutes putting in a bit more of the surrounding skin colour. Now I'm going to go in with some reds finally, and browns, and build up these darks in here. And this is the darkest area, but as usual with these darkest darks, apart from the pupils, it's not going to be black. I'm going to use a layering of reds and blues and browns. This is quite a pinkish red, it's Crimson Lake. I'm just going to introduce the colour following some of those lines. And that really is enough of the colour just to suggest the lip colour. Like I said, you don't want to put heavy blocks of colour on, because it will start to look, firstly, like the person's wearing lipstick, and secondly, it'll start to look flat. Just taking a bit of this colour into these shadows. To integrate everything. And tiniest bits of blue, just in the very darkest meeting points, these lips. I think getting somewhere near it being done. Just seeing one area at the top where it needs a little bit darkened. We just lightly go over these, give those highlights a bit of colour like we talked about before. Tiny touch of grey in the surrounding area too. Oh, I think we're all done.